I'm studying this about Judus versus SimonPeter. 2,000 years ago, the old traditional betrayal of Jesus Christ. Looking at the difference between SimonPeter, who wanted to steal Jesus's fame and ministry for himself, and Jesus pre-knew this. And which culture and tradition is the most sarcastic? Is it the Jews? Which culture and tradition? I recently heard in the news there was a statistics done how much sarcasm is used in a country. I think they said was it Greece? Where did I hear that statistic from on the news? I think they said it was one ancient country. I don't remember on the top of my head. But the point is, SimonPeter was very sarcastic when he said, "I will follow you to the death." He didn't really mean it. He was making a amateur sarcastic joke. But it came across as serious. And Jesus knew that Yeshua, I say Yoshua, you say Yeshua. I say potato, you say potato. Christ, God's Son already knew everything about SimonPeter. So many Christians are saying that the three denials of SimonPeter, I don't know who he is, to protect himself from danger and death threats. Yeah, he did that. I don't know who he is. Leave me alone. And he was embarrassed. He was ashamed of knowing Jesus because Jesus was a loser. He was not a winner. He was going to be crucified. He's lost his court case. He's going to go and be crucified. Whereas it's similar to losing your business, losing your arms and legs. Yeah. Very, very similar to losing your one and only child, having a miscarriage, something so devastating. And so he wanted to avoid that grief. He wanted to develop wings and escape from reality. And in fact, these denials, the more I'm studying it, of SimonPeter is worse than the betrayal of Judas Iscariot. Because Judas Iscariot was so ashamed, so embarrassed over the fact that he had betrayed Christ, God's Son, he committed suicide because he hated himself so much. So there's a huge difference between the demon in the suicidal rodent at the end, the double west, which is the dog frog rat, but I'll just use the 2 rather than the 3, so I'm not confusing people for mental health services. The frog rat at the end, which is going to swap and switch by the devil, not by God, they end up hating themselves, this particular demon. The other type of demon, who is the denial and blocking the freedom of Christ, blocking the authority of Christ, blocking the options that Christ has an option. These denials are obviously worse than betrayals because he was embarrassed of Jesus. of not being able to have his authority, not being able to have his freedoms. He's a loser. He's going to die. I don't know why so many Christians actually believe that Judas Iscariot is worse compared to SimonPeter. So SimonPeter's demon is the two demons, I'm not going to mention the three, which is the rat frog. And that also switches where the frog becomes a rat, in the devil, not in God. But God also does something very similar when it comes to switching and swapping. Yeah, because God is the potter who shapes the clay for every personality. So this is again where mental health services are out of order, where they're playing God and goddesses. So some switching and swapping is necessary in order to develop maturity, independence, and to develop mental health. And without somebody else's interference, without somebody else's influence, you have to find your own root, your own personality, your own soul searching. So the very thing that's advocating for mental health can do more damage than good when they play gods. These psychiatrists, psychologists, etc. So many craps who are playing gods. So what happens then when poop hits the fan? These demons in a crisis situation had exploded, or either inwardly or exwardly. It's interesting to know. I don't know, I'm still learning whether both of the men 2,000 years ago, relevant for today in a crisis situation, if they were introverted or extroverted. If one had an extrovert and the other one had an introvert type, it's possibly that Judas Iscariot was an introvert, so he imploded, compared to the extrovert SimonPeter, who exploded, or who was an extrovert. Oh, yeah, it's very fascinating. And it's not a fake laugh. My laugh is real. Sometimes it's a bit high-pitched. Sometimes my laughter has moods. It's never about very rarely is my laughter about acting, unless I am actually acting. I let everybody know that I'm acting. Of course, if it is a death threat situation, then I don't let everybody know that I'm acting. But I don't often act, and I realised that my laughter has got moods. Sometimes my laughter is connected to being irritable and annoyed, and it sounds like this. Sounds mischievous, like a witch. Other time, when I'm angry or I feel sometimes sadistic, sometimes vengeful. And I pray to God, please take these evil moods from me. I don't want to be vengeful. I don't want to be sadistic. But sometimes I do actually have the pleasure of knowing that my enemy is hurt, which is a sin. God says, do not gloat over anyone. Do not laugh when somebody falls over, not even if it's your enemy. It's bad manners. So I ask God to remove these bad manners from me. And if I can't do it, enable me to do it supernaturally, to block this bad, moody laughter, which is sadistic or gloating over an enemy. Then it sounds like this. Ha! 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 Other moody laughters, I have various different types. And there is nobody laughing sadistically at Jesus that is mentioned in the Bible. Like a wicked witch going, nothing like that. That's the laugh. It's not mentioned. It's just not mentioned. Not mentioned in any of the films of Jesus being crucified or anyone laughing at him, which is, or insulting him. I know many did insult him. However, I don't remember any mention of the bullies of Jesus who crucified him. They did insult him, but I did not hear any laughter. On many accounts, so there's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, mentioning the death of the dying Christ. Sounds horrific. The execution, the bullying, the insults. Even the point of relief for the opportunity to bite the sponge to release some pain. Even that. So humanity is so cruel. Too cruel. So, out of the two demons, the two men, which of the two demons are more cruel? That is a replica, like a clone, of many humans. So, the answer is, oh my good God, it is SimonPeter, not, wakey, not Judas the Iscariot. Because Judas the Iscariot knew he was demon-possessed and he didn't know what to do with himself. He hated himself so much. He was so disgusted with himself. He was so furious with himself when he realized what he had done, that is to shed the blood of the innocent in order to make his business an authority. And it was about the money. It wasn't about fame. Compared to SimonPeter, it was about the fame, not about the money. So he really sort of, in reality, he sort of had a revenge on Christ because he left his wife, probably children behind to follow Jesus. So it was he was a bad opportunist. During the worst bad misfortune, it's not even that. It's losing everything in court and going to be executed in an executing chair for the crimes you never committed. So it was worse than simply calling it bad luck or simply calling it a misfortune. It was the end. It was the beginning of the end for Christ. And when Christ needed SimonPeter the most, he turned a blind eye. He ignored him because he didn't want to be crucified with Jesus, and because he didn't want to lose his fame. Yeah. And so the holy angels and the Holy Spirit and the holy witnesses exposed these demons and shined a light in the darkness and questioned him 3 times. And he denied Jesus 3 times. I don't know him. I don't know who he is. I don't know him. Never met him. Stranger danger stranger. Was never his friend. I never spoke to him. I don't know who he is. So we talk about stranger danger, but what about your false friends? They're even worse. Your false friends are more cruel compared to the stranger danger. They did this to Christ. They did the stirring, the bad type of stirring. So those who are closest to you can hurt you the most, even than the stranger danger. So when Christ needed them the most as true witnesses, they were too afraid. They would rather be a false witness because it was appropriate to disguise themselves because they were clever and crafty. They're saying that Jesus was stupid because Jesus did not disguise himself, and that Jesus was stupid. He was not clever at all. And it was appropriate what SimonPeter did in this circumstance because he didn't want to end up being crucified with Jesus. So they're saying that SimonPeter was preserving himself and protecting himself from the current worst case scenario. And so it's a very fascinating subject because I often talk about and think about this subject, the crucified Christ. I often do in the times of Passover, in the times of battle, where the enemy is telling me to have a disguise so that I am camouflaged, that I behave as an animal. And I don't want to do that because I have an invisible face. I have invisible clothing. And I have an invisible body. What I am in this camera is not a real face. What I am, even if I was stripped naked, it's not my real body. My real body is the spiritual body before the physical body. And this is why I come to 100% detest that which is wicked, that puts the physical body before the spiritual body. And they hurry you, they rush you and pressurize you. Come on, dress a certain way, look a certain way, wear naked type of makeup, the one that gives you beige lips, outlines the circumference of your lips, that makes your lips look like an animal, that makes your lips look like blood or some type of fruit, some type of sodomite, in order to be the first seen and last heard as a dominatrix. Or you can camouflage yourself and make your lips seem bigger. You could have injections in your lips. You could have a facelift. And all of these surgeries in order to mask your face or your body as a camouflage, as what animals do in the animal kingdom, in order to protect yourself. So everybody in the masses, probably the majority, believes that Judas Iscariot was more evil and more wicked, betraying compared to replacing. So when we do that and study in the Bible how SimonPeter had denied and replaced Jesus as a parasite. So he was the parasite, the type of a water bear, which was a bad water bear, not the good type. And Judas Iscariot was as a T-Rex monster. Tyson. Not Tyson. Tyson. Tyrannosaurus. Oh my god, I can't say it. T-Rex. 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 Dragon. Was he as a T-Rex? Judas Iscariot. I don't know. Probably. But the others who were left behind or who run away were they as a dragon. It's very interesting because the Bible has a pattern of which it behaves. Like there's a gap, like a 500-year gap of his story in between the Old Testament and the New Testament. And so this pattern that emerges as reading the Bible and the scriptures, and how I like to study it, comparing the prophet Job and all the prophets put together, Jonah and Jesus, Yeshua, they all seem to have something in common, like that history is repeating itself, both for good and for evil. And so Job was confronted by the dinosaur and the dragon, and split into two, these main demons, or three, because he said, do not go to the little creatures, which the dinosaur was obsessed and possessed about as a type of a land lagoon animal, looking at the little creatures. So there is a third element, or the third demon. The little minions, the little ones. Do not focus on the little ones. So that there must be the three demons then, it's threefold. You have Judas Iscariot, you have SimonPeter, and you have the others leftover, the remnant or the leftover of Jesus' disciples. The other, so 12 minus 2, which makes 10, the other 10 of them, who are as the little ones. Yeah, it's very fascinating, this. And so it's also similar to me comparing myself 2,000 years ago relevant today. Who would be the dinosaur looking at the minions? It would be the social media, the politicians, the celebrities, and all the five I've mentioned in my commentary in the public, how they looked at my parents and how they've caused so much hate in my life all my life. So the dinosaur, the T-Rex, is social media and everything and anything on the internet, from shopping to banking to social. Who would be the dragon? Which is symbolic to SimonPeter, right? SimonPeter as a dragon, and all this internet stuff as Judas Iscariot. And the other 10, symbolic to the 10 of the disciples of Jesus, would be my all the people who've known me in my past, including my relatives. And yeah. So they don't immediately disappear, because they remain on the scene when Jesus had died and resurrected from the dead. And they were afraid because they could smell the stench. It's not in the film. So all the films made of Jesus Christ, I've mentioned laughter with the insults. That seems to be missing in all the films. We see blood and gore, but we don't have a sense of bad smell. Smell your own shit. Smell your own body odor. Feel the sweat. We don't really have that prominently in the films. It's missing. What else is missing? Was Jesus completely stripped naked? Was Jesus covered discreetly with some wrapping around his penis? Or did they completely remove his underwear and the wrap around his penis? It says that his garments and clothing was removed, but it doesn't mention the underwear. That's missing. The assistant carrying Jesus' cross, instructed by the leaders when Jesus could no longer carry it and he became as a disabled person. Jesus became as disabled, not being able to walk. He was crawling to his limit. So he was like treated as a rodent going through some tunnel or parade. The opposite of being cornered, you're paraded or forced to go to a tunnel for these tyrants and their tunnel vision. And so his assistant was carrying his cross, who was probably a black man. And when they came to the edge of that skull, Golgotha place, street name, it was impossible for Jesus to move. He became motionless, paralyzed. So I know what that feels like. Sure. And so then it was as if a heavy vehicle or a van run him over. But he was in so much agonizing pain, he probably fainted on that cross. So there is no mention what happened to the assistant. That's missing. Did the assistant who was carrying his cross, was he remaining in the presence of Jesus, conscious or unconscious? Or did his assistant who carried his cross, who is probably the black man, because black men are usually stronger than the white men, sorry, did he remain? Did he leave? We don't know. It doesn't say. So all these things that are missing, the woman who prepared a cloth to wash the sweat and the tears and the blood, also she ran over to him to give him some refreshment, but it didn't last long. She probably remained with his mother. His mother definitely did remain to his dying breath, to his last breath. So these are all the things that are missing. What appeared during his crucifixion in films had disappeared. And this is how they get, it's a gotcha feeling for the audience watching the film of Jesus being crucified. I think I've only watched it probably about once in 10 years or something like that, because I felt sick. I felt I was going to vomit or even faint watching that. And crying, I would cry. And even if I turn around or put the volume down, I just remember how much suffering it is, and the cruelty of the executioner, the torturer, and this is what makes me feel so disgusted and sick and vomit or tears, that I need to switch it off, turn the volume off. It's the same as watching a horror film, but worse. It's like suddenly feeling guilty, suddenly remembering all my sins of my past. It's mixing guilt with pain. And it's something that God hates. God says, I hate the guilty who are somber. So God says, it's bad enough that you're guilty. I have to look at your stupid, sad face. So God likes people who are repentant and humbled, wash their face, cry, wash their face, and then trust, and then move on. Not to sulk and feel sorry for yourself and to mix guilt with pain. God hates that. And this is exactly what these films have done that have created Jesus being crucified, which is wrong. And I think God hates this type of film because it focuses on people feeling guilty for what they've done to God's Son, and it's mixed with sadness. No, when you're guilty, you then feel happy because you trust that God will forgive you your sin. You feel happy, you feel refreshed. If you're not going to smile, if you're not going to laugh, you're going to wash your face and you're going to sleep and trust, or you're going to fear and feel excited, expecting God to remove your sins. Or you're going to feel like you want to abstain from food or abstain from sex until God removes your sin. And so God loves that type of sinner, but God hates the type of sinner who mixes guilt with stupid sadness and somberness, which is depressive and disgusting. And so it's worse than a horror film because of this feeling that comes over me. It's like being forced to feel guilty when I know I've already been forgiven for it. So if I do watch a film of Jesus being crucified, it's very rare. When I do Passover and remember Jesus' death, I remember how he turned what was negative into a positive, not to focus too much on the negative. And so that's how I will recover and recuperate. I just dial Jesus' invisible number, call him up and tell God what I want. Call him up and tell what I want. But the invisible monstrosity and enemy who is constantly throwing accusations in my face, it's ugly. It's corrupt. It should be the other way around. That they're exposed as thorns and a bad type of a haunting compared to God and God's Christ, who is a holy type of haunting that is able to find out what's hurting you, like a thorn or a splinter, and you get it out, like I'm going to do with my foot, with a shorty in there. What a friend we have in Jesus. So even though I've had my family and friends and all betray me and all of this, the 3 demons I've mentioned, the betrayer, the denier, in other words, the one who replaces you, sponger, and those who run away as cowards, the 10 leftovers. So God can take that demon, turn it around and use it for good rather than use it for evil, against sinners who against sinners who know that I'm against them, and they know that I'm against them and I don't like them. So when I sing Amazing Grace, and when I say what a friend we have in Jesus, they're mocking that. So let them. They can carry on cursing me because I know God has cured me from their curses, until I can find people that are ashamed of the fact what they've done and want to stop doing the bad thing. It's simple as that. Because I think of Jesus' name, Yeshua's name. I think I'm reminded of God with these songs. And I was a mum, but she's now grown up. I don't have any more children. And so I'm concerned how these cheeky, wicked individuals who exploit the poor, steal that information for a film, for a music thing, without giving me any compliments, no credit, no single point of anything, which is very exploiting the poor is extremely dangerous. They know my address, they know my phone number, they're at my doorstep. How much do you owe me? And is it on my way? But if they can't pay it back, because what they've stolen, which is just disrespect, which is worse, it hurts more than a thorn. So they can't pay me anything. The only thing that they can do is stop being too nice, stop being too nasty, and look at every incident that they can allow God to be used by God to turn the danger or any bad incident, which is astonishing, into a positive thing. God is not a positive. It's not about positive, negative. It's to turn it into to turn healthy. But sometimes God wants to turn you unhealthy in order for you to be pardoned from your sin. That's the point. That's what God did to Job. And that's what God did to all of God's servants. They had to go through an unhealthy thing because they are sinners, humble sinners, in order to be purified and become saints, to receive the health. And that is also a way to heaven. But I don't want my social media to turn up to become a concentration camp or an executionist place. Neither do I. Maybe I was making a joke. I said maybe it could become like a dating agency if I found a suitable person, and then they can look at my channels and we get to know each other like that and have something to talk about for meetups and all of this. But nothing's working.